Switching gears a little bit here with Ed Birn, the Department of Administration Director, joining us in the Link Zoom room. Good morning, Mr. Birn.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Sabrina.
Good morning.
I guess.
Good
yeah, good morning. Well, how's the weather?
You have to talk to me to find out what the weather is doing.
Are you over at ITC? How's the morning looking?
Yes, so at ITC, it's wet here, and the road. I hope people be careful because the roads are pretty flooded. So just be considerate of other drivers.
Right on. Well, thanks for joining us. I know that we get you on periodically for an update. There was something, though, that I saw you were very involved with. Was this pay increase for the nurses, right?
Yes. Yes. We have spent the last, I think it's been about 2.5 months looking at nurses' pay. And as we said in the press conference, one of the big factors that drove this whole thing was the availability of nurses during the public health emergency and the fact that we had to employ a fair number of off-island nurses in order to keep the health facilities going. And we want to make sure that we pay the nurses a wage that keeps them and recruits them. I mean, obviously, the first thing we want to do is to make sure that we recruit as many nurses as possible and keep them on island so that health services can continue and not get disrupted simply because we don't have an adequate number of nurses.
I mean, Mr. Birn, it kind of almost seems like we might have opened a 5440 style Pandora's box with this. The nurse is going to get theirs. One of the conversations we're consistently having here on the link is with the parade of law enforcement officials talking about how they can't retain officers for the very same reason you said that we gave the nurses a raise. So are they next in line?
We haven't decided yet who's going to be the next for the study. And of course, the study might conclude that the particular group that we're looking at is paid adequately. It's just that in this particular case, we concluded that we were behind national averages, and there was a drain of people. I looked recently at the attrition in law enforcement during this financial year, and it hasn't been that great. So that may not account for ability to recruit. We're in the middle of recruiting for GFD and GPD, but I don't think that the situation is as concerning as it certainly was with nurses, because we didn't have to go offshore and employ law enforcement people, but we did have to go offshore and employ nurses.
Mm-hmm. Well, just kind of sticking with what Chris was mentioning, we've had the Department of Corrections on Anton Uggan, we've had GPD on Steve Ignacio, we've had Melanie Brennan on from DYA, also CPS, and one thing they have consistently brought up is incentive pay, and they've been talking, they said, to the Department of Administration about implementing or offering incentive pay as a way to retain and even recruit people. Can you tell us what's the latest on these talks?
Yes, I can. As far as DYA, and then I'll move to DOC in a minute. DYA, we already did a quick study because of the situation there, and it was about 6 months ago, and we proposed and it was agreed that they should get some incentive. They have, in fact, implemented that incentive, and they have advised us that it has helped with not only just morale, but it has helped to keep people. DOC had a similar study, and that was also recommended, but DOC have not yet implemented it, I think because of budget reasons. I know they're working with BMR on that, we were certainly concerned to make sure that those two departments, which were suffering from higher than normal attrition, were taken care of. DOC, I think, is actually in a class all by itself, because you're asking people to spend their working hours in a confined space with people, that are, I guess you have to conclude that everybody that's in prison is a criminal. So, they're in a confined space with convicted criminals, and that's not what everybody wants to do. Certainly, I don't know about you, but I certainly would think twice about taking that particular job. So retention there is certainly a problem, but we're hoping that when this can get implemented, and with some changes I know the DOC are making to working conditions to improve the working conditions, because that's part of the equation. I'm certainly hoping that retention will improve there.
Mm-hmm. What's the incentive pay? Like, what's the percentage, I guess, for DYA and then DOC? So like 10% or?
No, I think it was 15%.
For DYA and DOC?
They were the same, but I would have to check. And it was some while ago, so maybe.
And when you say DYA, is that inclusive of CPS, Child Protective Services?
Now, this happened before Child Protective Services was included into DYA. We're looking at that separately, because that was an emergent problem. The problem there seemed to be twofold. One is that CPS employees have to work very long hours and are basically always on call. I mean, they're not confined, but they're always on call, which is something that certainly affects them. But also, they're dealing with cases that, all of them have a really sad story behind them.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that they're equipped, not only financially, but emotionally equipped to deal with that. Which and I know that there's been a lot of work done on that in the last few weeks. Now that the forces of DYA and DPHS have been combined on that.
Okay, so that's still a work in progress. Any other government agencies that have come to DOA and said, "Hey, we need to implement some sort of incentive pay"?
Almost every comes and wants incentive pay. Some, of course, go direct to the legislature and try. But we certainly advise both them and senators that it's best dealt with this administratively, because laws always seem to have unintended consequences. Whereas if it's dealt with administratively, not only can we think about all the consequences, but we can adjust if necessary, which is much more difficult if you actually kind of freeze it into a law.
Right. You mentioned the legislature, and I was just reading through my emails, and I noticed there was a release from Senator Talina Nelson's office regarding COVID differential pay, specifically for customs officers, and wanting an update on that. But I know that we've spoken to like the Mayor's Council of Guam, and I believe GPD and DOC and GFD, that they're still waiting for COVID differential. And according to the Mayor's Council, it's an issue of no CARES Act funding, right, to pay it out. Is that kind of what's happening? Is we just have to wait for whether or not we're going to use ARPA money?
That's exactly it for most agencies, right? As far as, customs, Senator Nelson wrote to me, we don't have the timesheets here to pay the hazard pay, and they're held up. And I believe the issue is that they, and I have to say, of course, if these agencies had presented these in a more timely basis, at that time, there might have been the funds available, but they didn't. So now we're having to wait for a determination for where in the ARPA money we can actually fit in and pay out these amounts.
Mm-hmm. So any idea, though, when or which agencies actually still are waiting for COVID differential? Is it almost all of them?
No, not all of them. Certainly, I know public health, obviously customs. Um, I believe there's a little bit at fire, but not that much. And I think actually public health is the one that has the most number of people who need to. They're further behind than anybody else. Customs will finish December 5th, so but public health is still. They've got a fair amount of people in each of their divisions who were paid round about the same time, somewhere in December or January. But as I say, we have the timesheets, and obviously we can't pay people until we get the timesheets. So those departments need to work on the funding, and some of them can find alternative funding. Like public health has access to other federal funding. So we're working with them and with BBMR to try and make sure that we can pay as many people the backlog of hazard pay as possible.
And we say backlog, we're looking at probably since CARES Act money was expended, which is what, December?
Yes,
So
yes, that's generally the case,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Do you have an update on ERA?
Yes. We actually have paid out something just over 2 million with ERA. Last week there was some discussion about what delays or what was causing the delay to the swift payout of some of these amounts, and generally it's just lack of documentation. Unfortunately, the federal rule says you've got to have A, B, C, D, E before you can pay it out. And many of the claimants don't have everything. So we work with them to collect all these documents and get the supporting document from their landlord. It's a lot of work, and we too lost some people there. We have a retention problem here sometimes, but we are recruiting to get back up to strength. And these claims are being pushed through as much as we can.
You guys still accepting applications for ERA, or is it closed?
I think the ERA 2, the second one, I think closes round about now. So
Okay.
get their claims in.
Ed, let me just ask. So was it like 23 million that was set aside for the ERA?
We got 33 million.
33 million, and you've given out 1 million, right?
Yeah.
2. You said
2
2.
million. Okay.
But bear in mind, please, that 33 million plus the 11 million we got for ERA 2 has to last through the end of next year. So because it can be prospectively paid as well as retrospectively paid. And I'm certainly thinking that when unemployment runs out in September, the number of claims for ERA will certainly increase. We're not probably going to get an extension to unemployment. I don't know whether there's going to be another set of stimulus payments, but we can't count on it. So as we go through the year, I really believe that a whole lot of people will lean more on ERA rather than on the other funding that they've been able to get so far.
So would you say as of now, is it just something with the process, or is it that the need is not there for our people?
I think there's three things, Chris. One is the need is less than I think it's going to be, right? Because, and some people during the course of the months before ERA was introduced by the federal government did their very best because like anybody else, they want to pay their bills. They did their very best to pay their bills. And sometimes that meant borrowing from, friends and relations. And sometimes it meant borrowing on credit cards. And we're looking at how we can relieve that if it's within the rules.
Yeah.
Because, they made the effort to pay, whereas some people who just weren't in a position to pay are now getting the benefit of this particular assistance. So there are many things that we're trying to do to equalize the whole position. One of the other things that when asked is delay is just the informal nature of arrangements that we have on island. You know, we do things with a handshake, and very often people are renting from their relatives or from somebody who might be known to them, and there's not paperwork. And we have to go back and read that paperwork in order to fit in with the rules. So we're actively working with all these people to try and maximize the benefit. And you know, that's kind of a satisfying thing to do, but it takes time.
Right. So Ed, does if I'm a renter and I'm applying for the ERA, and my landlord, who's whatever, a family friend, doesn't have like a business license, how does
The
my
business
app go ahead?
license issue, yes, you're right. The business license issue is an issue. Not everybody who is a landlord has a business license, and a number of the claimants, because in the end it's the landlord who benefits from this funding,
Right.
have chosen to go ahead and get business licenses, and we're looking at how we treat those that don't, because that there are a fair number of people that have this informal arrangement. And why would you get a business license if you have an informal arrangement? So we're trying to work our way through that too.
I had another question, but this is on a different topic. Can you give us an update on the procurement of a financial management system?
Yes, I can. And I'm sitting on,
Thank you.
sitting on the edge of,
Don't get mad about it.
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, trying to push this through. You know, as you saw, we had the audit and the single audit released in the last few days, and many of the problems that we're noted in there and we're dealing with comes from having a system that's just not up to date. So we've been working. We got approval from the Attorney General to proceed on Friday. So we're pushing forward with an RFP to get this system in as quickly as we can. You know, in my mind, it's an emergency. You know, to those that don't use it, maybe it doesn't sound like it, but I can tell you that to everybody here and in other parts of the government, with all the additional funds, all the additional requirements as to come in from all this additional funding, all of which have different regulations. I mean, although you probably look at the ARP funds, the main amount that got given to us by the U.S. Treasury, there's lots of funding that comes into other agencies under the ARP funding process that also has to be dealt with in exactly the same way. So with all this pressure on the system, we certainly want to get this system in and up and running as quickly as possible. And it will help, with transparency. It's very difficult now to be transparent. It's not transparent to the users. So it's certainly pretty difficult to make it transparent to the public. So I'm certainly confident that we can make some of these reports quicker, more useful with a new system.
Mm-hmm. So now that the AG said, okay, it's good, what kind of time frame are we looking at?
Well, we have to issue the RFP. We're issuing it this week.
Right.
We're going to give bidders about, I think it's like 2.5 weeks to respond. It's not like bidders weren't aware of this, because like I say, you've been asking about it. So I'm sure all the bidders were listening to you to find out what was going on. So I'm confident of getting these responses pretty quickly. And we want to get through the process as quickly as we can, because I don't want to clash with the year end. The whole purpose of this was not to clash with the year end. And some of the delays have kind of made that a little bit dangerous, but we're going to work and try and make sure that doesn't happen.
All right. Well, thanks, Mr. Birn, for all the updates.
Thank you. I didn't know I had so many things to update, but I'm glad I did.
Yep, very productive visit.
You.
Right, stay dry.
Yeah.
Yes, keep well and keep dry.
Thank you.
All
There you
right,
go.
stay safe.
Mr. Ed Birn, Department of Administration Director, 758. Right here on the link. Miss a link. Miss a lot. We did have Landon Eilert with the very, very in-depth weather report earlier in the hour. Did he say that they're doing something at 8, Jay?